Hello, welcome back. It's me, your host, Vincent Monteleone of Bookshelf Brilliance, where timeless knowledge meets modern insight. We're so excited to continue on with our journey through how to win friends and influence people. By now, you should know the drill. We do the dirty work, we read the book, then bring you the teachings chapter by chapter so you can sprint to the finish line. We're about to hit the halfway point of part 2, the 6 ways to make people like you, as we get on with chapter 3. If you don't do this, you are headed for the trouble, which makes me think of Vince Vaughn's character in The Internship when he refers to online as on the line. Subscribe to us wherever it is on the line that you get your podcast. You guys see what I did there? And follow us on Instagram at Bookshelf Brilliance. Now, without further ado, let's get rolling. Hey, you guys remember what's his face? You know, the guy with the thing. He had the car. Come si chiama? That's the paisan coming out of me. Sorry about that, guys. When you study successful people like Dale Carnegie has done, you come to realize that they all had an uncanny ability to remember people's names. Is that important? Think about yourself. When somebody important calls you by name, instead of, oh yeah, you work for so-and-so, or you're so-and-so's son, so-and-so's daughter, how much better does it make you feel when they know your name, right? And not just describing you by some of your vague attributes. Like ourselves, this holds true with everyone else. The average person is more interested in his or her own name than all the other names on earth put together. So remember that name. Jim Farley was a name that I didn't know until reading this book and this particular chapter within this book. It's actually the only time he comes up, and we may never hear his name again, but he was a very successful man. Due to hardships early in his life, Jim never had the chance to really get a formal education. But he had that personality, he had a flair in him for making people just like him. And that led to him going into politics. And as the years went by and he increased in prominence, he never lost the skill that was most important towards making him successful. His uncanny ability for remembering people's names. When Carnegie interviewed Farley and asked him the secret of his success, Farley said, hard work. And Carnegie kind of rebuffed back at him, don't be funny, right, everybody? Hard work, put your head down, do right, blah, blah, blah. But Farley eventually turned it back on Carnegie and he said, let me ask you, what do you think is the reason for my success? And Carnegie went back, he said, I understand you can call 10,000 people by their first name. This offended Farley, and he said, no, you're wrong. I can call 50,000 people by their first names. It was that ability that helped Farley put FDR in the White House and keep FDR in the White House for 4 terms. Farley knew he had to get people to feel important. So when he would go to a conference or anything where there was lots of people, he would ask for a list and write each person a personalized letter that started with, Dear Vincent, Dear Mary. Now this is likely the first time you've heard of Jim Farley, but there's another name of another successful individual, Andrew Carnegie, that I'm sure you heard of before this. Andrew has no relation to Dale. I actually just Googled that and found out that Dale Carnegie was actually Dale Carnegie, Carnagay, when he was born in 1888 in Missouri, and that he changed his name after moving to New York. So that's a little fun fact that maybe comes up on Jeopardy or one of those trivia shows. But I digress. So back to Andrew Carnegie, who became the Steel King and was able to amass a $372 million net worth by the time he passed away, which in today's dollars would be worth north of $300 billion, which is enough scratch to make Elon Musk jealous. Since he didn't know much about steel, how was he able to become so rich working in steel? It was because he knew how to handle people, and he learned that lesson early on in life when he discovered the importance people put on their own name. When he was growing up back in Scotland, he found a mother rabbit that did what mother rabbits do and gave birth to a bunch of baby rabbits. Too many for Andrew to take care of himself. Wanting to keep all the rabbits, he came up with a brilliant idea. As he couldn't pick nearly enough clovers and dandelions to keep them all fed. So to get the help of all the boys and girls in his class, he said, "Hey, if you guys help me, you can name the rabbit after yourself." Those rabbits never went hungry, and Carnegie never forgot that lesson. When he wanted to sell steel to the Pennsylvania Railroad, he built his steel mill in Pittsburgh and called it the Edgar Thomson Steel Works. Edgar Thomson happened to be the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad back then. Coincidence? I don't think so. So when the Pennsylvania Railroad needed steel rails, where do you think they bought them from? And no, Carnegie wasn't the only game in town, but he had little competition in procuring that PO. When Carnegie was going toe-to-toe with Pullman, trying to get the sleeping car business of the Union Pacific Railroad to make peace and come to a merger, because they were just going to slash prices and everything until nobody really made any money in this, or as much money as they could have. Carnegie said to Pullman, he said, "Hey, let's stop this. Let's merge together and just go at this as one." Pullman, being like most of us, a little bit vain, asked, "What would we call the new company?" And Carnegie replied swiftly, "Why, the Pullman Palace Car Company, of course." Pullman's face was ecstatic at this, and a deal was struck shortly after. Carnegie's policy of remembering and honoring the names of his friends and business associates was the secret to his success and what made him a great leader. It was something also not lost on FDR, as Jim Farley rubbed off on him just a little bit, I would say. Roosevelt knew that one of the simplest, most obvious, and most important ways of gaining goodwill was by remembering names and making people feel important. All politicians, or at least all good politicians, learn early on to recall voters' names is statesmanship. To forget it is oblivion. But you don't need to, nor should you be a politician to remember and to put into practice this important lesson. Try it at your local lunch spot. Get to know the names of people who work there. "Hey, can I have a cup of coffee, please? You know what, Vin? You got a minute or two? I'm going to put on a fresh pot. This coffee's been sitting there for a while." Or when you get a sandwich, you notice that there's a couple extra pieces of ham or turkey on it than the guy in front of you just got. All this from remembering names. Something that good manners should make us do anyway. Don't let yourself off the hook saying, "Oh, I'm too busy, I got a lot on my mind," because you don't have more on your mind or are busier than Andrew Carnegie and FDR were. So learn the name, and you will become aware of the magic doing so possesses. Let's cross the goal line and get into the end zone. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. It's the reason kings want sons, so they can pass it on. It's likely the reason we have so many museums and libraries, because rich people wanted their names to live on forever. Get ready for the Musk and Bezos centers and halls that will be popping up along all the metropolises across the U.S. and probably other countries too, showing that it's worth billions to remember a name. So you better prioritize it. Find ways to ensure you remember them. If it's a tough ethnic name to you, ask them to repeat it, spell it, whatever you need. Maybe write it down, text it to yourself. Make it work. Principle 3. Remember a person's name. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and making those genuine connections that last. We can't thank you enough for hanging out with us, spending your precious time. We know how busy you all are, so we appreciate you giving some of your time to hang out with us. And me, your host, Vincent Monteleone. If you're not already, please follow us on Instagram at Bookshelf_Brilliance and email us with anything your heart desires, even if you just want to say hello, at bookshelfbrilliancevm@gmail.com. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Leave us a review, rate us. It really helps the show. I can't wait till next time. Be well, folks.